just gonna like write in the chat, hey, everyone, sorry for the technical technical difficulties. We are switching it over to YouTube. And I'll like write in the chat. Oh, okay. I guess we're live. Let me turn off because I could hear myself, which is weird. All right, I'm posting it in the, and I'll record it so you have a copy of it as well.
Thanks.
All right, let's do this. Starting recording. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to introduce to you Teresa Syms, who is, would you like to introduce yourself? Because I'm sure you could do a better job than how I'm.
Oh, thanks, Davidson. I'm Teresa Syms, and I own a personal development life coaching practice in Ontario, Canada. I am a living example of what can be accomplished when you put the effort in, when you put the effort into discovering who you are, what you stand for, your values, what's working in your life, and what is not working in your life. And that is what I have learned over the years as a survivor of childhood abuse and neglect, sexual assault, spousal abuse, you name it, near-death car accidents, life-threatening things. So it's an examination of life, and that's what I love doing in my coaching.
Hmm. Yeah, and thank you so much. So Teresa and I met through her podcast, Powering Through Life, which is I really appreciate the intentionality and just like the depth and just to be able to have the space to share. And I know you've gone through a lot of different stages and rebuilding aspects of life, and I know that you've done intensive NLP. So people who don't know what that is, that's neuro linguistic programming, which I first discovered through Tony Robbins. And then you're also a timeline therapy therapist certified as well. So I'm sure we'll go through some of that as well. But I think what a lot of people will get from our live stream today is a sense of hope, a sense of acceptance, and overall just I think our conversation will help people just reflect a little bit more about some of the moments, unfortunate circumstances, and obstacles that they've experienced in life, and they'll leave feeling probably inspired, probably a sense of hope, and overall that things will be okay. And you're obviously an amazing healer, so if anyone wants to reach out, I'll post all of your contact details on your website as well in the detail section. So
Thank you.
excited to
Appreciate
have
that.
excited to have you on the YouTube channel and the podcast as well.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm so glad we're getting to do this. It's nice to meet like-minded people who are, have the same core values and the same set of wants and desires and passions in life.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, right? If you were to ask me like 10 years ago, I would be having conversations like this. I would be like, no, like that's weird, or I'm not a qualified therapist. Like, why would I even go there? Or it would just be scary to talk about a lot of the topics that we would be talking about today. Nor would I ever think that I'd be talking to someone from Canada, right? Like just so it's just interesting how the world works, but the universe has connected us together, and I have been a better person just through our brief interactions, right? It's not like we've known each other for a really long time, but I do when you're vulnerable, right? And when you're sharing, which is what we're gonna do for the next hour or so, it's hard to not feel connected. It's hard to not feel like maybe everything happened for a reason.
Yeah, I sometimes think that too, where the paths we follow in life take us down places and avenues that we're not prepared for, we don't really want to go to, and we don't understand why we're being led in that direction. But there's always a reason, and you need to keep a lot of times an open mind and an exploration mind, and keep your eyes open, because there's so many potential um, things that can that can be presented to you. It could be great things, it could be not so great things, it could be disastrous things, but each one of those offers us and and guidance in who we are and where we need to be in our lives. That's how I see it.
Hmm. Now I know you shared with me in a separate, outside of this, but would you be open to sharing a little bit about more, why you've decided to do the work you're doing? And then, of course, if you can run us through some of the challenges, you mentioned briefly around, um, there was a time where you did quit the podcast as well, and then what compelled you to get back on it and to continue to live and be intentional about your legacy.
Absolutely. I did create the podcast in 2017, and it was as a means of giving support, ideas, resources, tools to people in the world that are experiencing difficult situations. Powering Through Life is all about sharing personal human stories of what we've gone through, how we've come through it, what we're doing to thrive on the other side of that. So the podcast was created almost for a need for myself. Had I had something like this and had something like this existed when I was a kid, I mean, there was no internet at that point in time, but giving talking about difficult situations that we've gone through, it's not just us experiencing it. Someone else in this world is experiencing something very similar. And that was the whole premise behind it. If we can touch one person, so that person today can say, do you know what? I'm not alone. That person's gone through something similar to me. Maybe I could try that. Or giving the courage for someone to actually take that first step, because it's not easy. It's a horrible thing to have to do. It's very challenging. It's very stressful. It's out of our comfort zones to reach out, because we get so stuck in the swamp of the mire of the situation or the event or the trauma, drama, however you want to phrase it, that sometimes we can't see that there's something outside of it. So
Mm,
that's why I created Powering Through Life. It was for myself, but for other people, mostly to inspire and to motivate.
mm,
And I always say it's, we're having a conversation to motivate the world. And
mm,
that's what I like to do, because those resources for me when I was younger didn't exist.
mm,
I was raised in a very small farming community, mostly Europeans settled in that area. And it was a hard life. It was, being raised by a second generation Canadian. It had its own challenges, like we had discussed living up to hereditary, uh, what do you call it, nationality issues. Like my family's from Belgium, and my grandparents both lived in the same town I did, and it's um, there's that influence from Europe. And in my case, the grandparents' parents didn't have a lot of time for the children. It was, you go figure it out. You work, you work, you work, you work. You
mm,
work in the fields, you work on the farm. It was, backbreaking work, but, it developed a great sense of accomplishment, a great work ethic. And I still carry that
mm,
through to this day. It's ingrained. But going through difficult situations in life, it's, where do you want to start? Which one do you want to choose, Davidson? I mean,
mm.
there's several that, you know, I think maybe the first really traumatic one was my car accident in 2007. Do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
think, and that's a common, like, car accidents are, a lot of people have gone through pretty traumatic car accidents, right? So that's a very relatable one as well. Mm,
Yeah, and I promise it's not my intent to trigger anyone with the conversation I'm about to share, but sometimes it does trigger people. So in 2003, I had left a 25-year marriage because I was dead inside. And I was so struggling to even be seen by anyone. I couldn't walk across the room in a restaurant because I was terrified someone was going to see me. That's how
mm,
much of self was destroyed.
mm,
And when I finally found the courage to walk away from that, it took me a while to rebuild myself and just calm and to understand who I was, because at 43, it was the first time in my life I had been alone. So that was a challenge on its own. But I had a plan in place. I went to college. I got an HR certificate. So my goal was human resources, which I loved, and did 2 years in one. So graduated, got a great job. I was in training and development and recruiting, and absolutely loved it. It was very stressful. It was a large corporation, but there was always something exciting to look forward to. But one day in February, and in southwestern Ontario, we get horrible snowstorms. At least we used to in the winter.
Hmm.
And this February day, it was clear in the morning, and then by 4 o'clock, 4:30 when I left, was a horrible snowstorm. The wind was whipping something fierce. There were whiteouts. There was, horrible ice on the roads. And I was driving a Dodge Ram. So, I felt comfortable and secure in my vehicle. And, being from the area I'm from, I know how to operate a vehicle very well. But you can't control what other people are going to do on the road. So I took a different route home, which was, a path that was laid in front of me. I didn't want to go straight through the city. I wanted to go around it, which was odd. I'd never done that before. So I don't know why that day I was being directed that way, other than this was the path I was supposed to take. And I, I was driving out in the country road, and the wind, like I say, was just whipping, and the ice was crazy on the roads, but everyone was going slow. The vehicle in front of me was like 5 or 6 cars ahead of me. The guy behind me was that distance too. We respected our space and our driving abilities. But when I saw another pickup truck coming towards me, that pickup truck started losing control. So everyone in my lane just kind of basically stopped. So we were sitting there. I had my foot on the brake, all that kind of stuff. And was just watching this truck coming towards me, losing control. It would spin off of the road, it would go backwards, it would hit the
Hmm.
gravel, come back on the road, all those sorts of things. And as I was watching this, I call it the death grip on the steering wheel.
Hmm.
I was watching so intently, waiting to see what was going to happen and where this truck was going to end up.
Hmm.
And for some reason, I knew it was going to be me. I mean, I watched this truck clip off the side mirror off the vehicle in front of me, lost control, spun out, and went off the side of the road on my left, spun around, came backwards in front of me, hit the gravel on my side of the road, and just slammed right up into the front of my truck. I was hit so hard that we had a stereo in the truck, and the front plate cover, was one that would flip down so you could put the CDs and all that. So it was an older truck.
Hmm.
That cover plate popped off and flew into the back seat of the truck.
Oh, wow.
My purse that was on the seat beside me went flying. The back end of the truck, I was told from the guy behind me, lifted a foot off the ground and just slammed right back down.
Hmm.
I, as I say, I had the death grip on the steering wheel, and I know I was doing this and clenching my teeth, because I saw what was happening. I believed I was going to die in that instance, and I was alone. I would never see my husband again. I had just gotten remarried 8 months prior to that. And, our kids, we were never good. I was never going to see my kids again, or my granddaughter. And, it just scared the daylights out of me. But what happened was, as soon as I was hit, my foot went straight down into the brake pedal. My leg locked in out in straight position, and then my hip jolted back, and I couldn't feel my legs. And the fellow that saw the accident, that was the witness for me, he came up and terrified me half to death. He said, "I smell fuel. Can you get out?" And I said, "No, I can't feel my legs." So you talk about enormous
Hmm.
amounts of panic, anxiety, whatever, fear. I mean, I wanted to run and I couldn't.
Hmm.
And then I watched the person that hit me get out of their truck and wander around the road. And you could tell that the person was just in, the adrenaline was going and they weren't in control. They didn't even realize what was going on. But it took a
Hmm.
long time for the ambulance and fire trucks to get there. And immediately they, put the neck brace on me because
Hmm.
my neck was an issue from injuries before. But they decided because of my back, they would take me out sideways in the truck. Well, I was a bit taller at that point in time. They cracked my head on the side of the door frame, trying to get me out. And anyway, long story short, um, I had another concussion, severe whiplash, soft tissue injuries all over my body. My knee, once my legs buckled, my knee slammed into the dash.
Huh.
I ended up with 10 fractured teeth because of the clenching. My neck has been described as a piece of spaghetti holding a bowling ball. That's how fragile my neck is. But they did all their testing in the hospital and then just said go home and rest. Well, I lost my career because I couldn't go back to work. I tried to go back to work. I couldn't, it just couldn't function. The neck
Hmm.
pain, I couldn't hold my head up. It was just
Wow.
ridiculous. So I actually spent the next 9 years at home trying to recover my health, get through a lawsuit from the accident,
Hmm.
where I was actually being accused of being guilty, and I was the one that was parked and hit. But it's an interesting process. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's an interesting
Yeah.
process to go through a motor vehicle accident lawsuit. It's not good. But,
Huh.
it took so many things went through my mind. Do I just give up? Do I just accept this? Do I just settle for what's going on with me now? Do I just, put that entire income burden on my husband? You just don't know how to process all of this. And then there was the health aspect, all the physio and the recovery and all the medical appointments I was being sent
Hmm.
to, and all the results saying, no, you're going to be like this for the rest of your life. And no, you need to go on disability. And,
Hmm.
I've been categorized as a catastrophic injury person. So
Hmm.
catastrophic injuries that probably will never heal. And,
Wow.
you know, if they're not going to heal, okay, fine. I need to find a way to get them to their, whatever the case may be, like my neck strength, get it to where it's possible that it can be the best it can be, that
Hmm.
it can help me, that it can serve me, and that I can function well. So that's what I had spent the next 9 years trying to figure out, is how I can do that. And then, started a small at-home business, a different one, and
Hmm.
thought, you know what, I can do something.
Hmm.
And my want all my life, I had always wanted to be a psychiatrist when I was a kid,
Hmm.
because I wanted to be the person that could help the little person I was when I was young, that didn't get
Hmm.
any help. And there was a lot of anger that came from my youth, a lot of fear, a lot of
Hmm.
limiting beliefs, negative emotions, all that kind of stuff, of the abuse, the violence, the
Hmm.
psychological damage, all that kind of stuff. It took a lot of self exploration and self discovery. And
Hmm.
that's when I actually started writing my book.
Hmm.
And that book was so cathartic. It was so healing for me, just to get everything out of my body, which I highly recommend. The physical act of writing, or
Hmm.
if you need to type, then type. But getting the negative stuff, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions out of your body
Hmm.
is a very, very helpful healing thing to do. So, highly recommend it.
Hmm.
Uh, so, I wrote my book. And then, as soon as I was finished writing my book, the coach that I had worked with also trained coaches. They worked with Zig Ziglar, Brendan Burchard, Eric Worre, all those bigger, influential coaching people.
Mm,
So I said, yeah, that would actually fit instead of the psychiatry thing, that maybe this would be the right avenue for me. So I did my
mm,
first coaching certification then. And, I've done, I think, four others since then
mm,
because I'm a chronic learner with multiple concussions. There's the possibility, with brain injuries that the memory will be affected, which I am noticing things, short-term memory. But, there's ways around things. But doing the coaching certifications are the best thing I ever did in my life. And then that expanded into NLP, which I've experienced from a client aspect. I've experienced NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnotherapy.
mm,
They're all fantastic modalities. And also cognitive behavioral therapy, which I also
mm,
have a certification in. As I say, I'm a chronic learner,
mm.
but what I learn is mostly for myself to heal, to grow, to expand. And then I share that knowledge and wisdom and experience with my clients that I work with.
Hmm. Wow. I mean, that's super inspiring. And I think most people probably wouldn't have the mental fortitude and the resilience, the grit, and just the hope. It sounds like you deep down inside you knew that it was possible, even though you knew it was going to be a long journey. But I'm sure majority of people would probably want to tap out, right? Or would want to give up. But it sounds like something within you knew that you were capable of being someone who can impact many lives, not only through sharing, through the podcast, through the books, but in being a therapist for others, right?
Absolutely. Oh, just to correct, I'm not a therapist. I don't claim to be a therapist. I'm a practitioner. That,
Got
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to be because there's a stigma that, or not a stigma, but a label that goes along with therapy, and I'm not a therapist. I have the training of the therapy, so that's just a little correction there, if you don't mind.
Mm.
But
Okay.
the resilience comes from my childhood. The strength that I have comes from my childhood,
Mm.
from being neglected, number one, as a child,
Mm.
not having enough food. Number two, I lived with one meal a day because that's all I could get, because my sibling kept
Mm.
blocking me from the kitchen when we were young. So I couldn't get there for food. So I went to school every day without food, hadn't eaten breakfast, I had no lunch, had to hide that fact. I
Mm.
played sports like crazy when I was young to
Mm.
get the anger and the aggression out of my body. I did
Mm.
sports like crazy. So I don't know. It was I was probably depleting my body stores, playing that much intensive sports without proper nutrition. But
Mm.
the strength I believe comes from, and I'll share a brief experience. Um, my father was an alcoholic. My mother, the people that raised me were, he was an alcoholic. She was mentally unstable.
Mm.
And their favorite sort of punishment for me seemed to be, when he was drunk, he would nail beer bottle caps on a piece of plywood with pointy sides up. That was placed in front of a full length mirror on the wall at the end of a hallway. And I had to kneel bare kneed on those when I was bad. And I was bad a
Mm.
lot, apparently. So I was just a child that wouldn't accept, what was going on because it wasn't right. And why was I being punished all the time? And, I
Mm.
thought I was doing okay, but I was ending up being
Mm.
treated this way. So kneeling on those beer caps
Mm.
in front of the mirror when I was just, crying my eyes out, not understanding. And this started at the age of 5. So it destroyed a lot of what I saw in that mirror. It destroyed who I thought that little girl was. But at the same
Mm.
time, if I slouched, I got a leather belt across my rear end to straighten up and kneel up straight. To this day, I can't kneel
Mm.
for other reasons, but what that situation did, they were attempting to break me down, but what that situation did was build me up. It
Hmm.
built my strength. It built my attitude of, you're not going to break me. I
Hmm.
will not give in to this. And I think that's where my level of determination and strength came from, survivorship,
Hmm.
that I still have today. So
Wow,
it
that's
helps.
really inspiring. It it's interesting, right? It's most people, I think the average person would view those all those things as a way of it would break most people down, right? And sounds like I'm sure at certain and sometimes it probably did, right? But it says that you're able to accept it and you're able to reframe what the majority of the world would consider negative and negative things. Not condoning like what they did was okay, but it sounds like you're able to make peace with it and view it as one of the reasons why you are so resilient, one of the reasons why you have the potential to be so empathetic, so compassionate with all of your clients and all of the people that you're serving, right?
Absolutely. It did create a lot of times, actually, Davidson, there were many times when I didn't think I could make it through. And there were many times when I attempted to end it on my own.
Hmm.
Specifically, when I was 18 years old, I attempted to end it on my own. And that attempt didn't work.
Hmm.
So I knew, and at that moment, when, there's that point where I don't know if I had mentioned to you, I attempted to drive my father's car into a tree. At that point in time, the car turned just before I hit the tree. The car turned and went back onto the road and stopped. And I don't know why. I didn't do it, but I
Huh.
heard the words, "You're not finished here yet." Something spoke to me. I don't know. Everyone would have a terminology of who that voice was, represents, whatever. I have my beliefs in who it was, and it impacted me greatly. It gave me the courage to say, okay, I can get through this. This is not going to break me. And I went home, and there was a huge change in my life at that point in time. I found the strength to keep going. I found the peace that I had needed for a long point in time. But
Hmm.
then, when you haven't actually done the internal work
Hmm.
to correct or to heal or to change, which I hadn't done at this point in time,
Hmm.
it's not going to stay. So that's when I got into the 25-year marriage that was not, you
Hmm.
know, a, a happy one, I would say. So, but, doing that internal work myself, and having these experiences myself, does fit with, how I can coach clients, how I can help clients walk through their stuff. And I don't always focus on trauma, but a lot of times the
Hmm.
trauma aspect, if someone's experienced it, will come to the forefront
Hmm.
because they've maybe pushed it down so far, like I did. Push it down so far, you bury it, but it keeps coming back every so often. It keeps affecting,
Hmm.
either your personal life or your professional life. It affects you in some way. And unless it's dealt with, and unless you can put it in its proper place, explore it, and learn from it, it will never change.
Hmm.
And that's where NLP and timeline therapy come in handy.
Wow. I mean that's a lot to unpack everything you just said, right? Like my my takeaway, I feel like yeah, in some ways I feel like um I can relate to a lot of what you're saying, right? With the, my dad was like abusive and he would hit me and we all have like what you said about the trauma coming back certainly resonates. Like and a lot of this is unconscious, right? A lot of it it's like I don't realize I'm pushing people away or I don't realize that I would rather be open up to random strangers like that I'm driving, like the 300 random strangers I've interviewed from Uber that I'm never going to meet again versus like my own sisters, my own mom, and my own wife right in front of me, right? It's like easier because it's like, oh, the trauma of my dad leaving and the heartbreak is like I don't want, I want to have the control. I want to have the upper hand. So I'm gonna only share if they open up first, right? So
Yeah,
what you're saying is really profound in terms of um, a lot of the traumas that we have, it comes up whether we like it or not, right? So how can we manage it? How can we have different distinctions? How can we have different tools and practices that, and it sounds like you've gone through a ton of learning. So you not only applied it with yourself, but you're able to now serve a lot of clients with people that have gone through similar types of trauma, right?
absolutely. Yeah. And, a lot of the clients I work with, they do have something stuck from their past or some event that went on in their past, like we all do. I mean, everyone has something,
Hmm.
to varying degrees. I think someone that says they've never experienced anything negative in their life, I
Hmm.
honestly would question that a little bit. Maybe they
Yeah.
just don't allow it to affect themselves. But I think
Hmm.
for myself, I recognize myself as an empathetic person, as almost a intuitive,
Huh.
and I'm very sensitive to energies, and very like
Hmm.
even through a Zoom call, I can feel the energy of who I'm talking with and working
Huh.
with. And, I'm very observant. So I see so much more than the
Hmm.
average person suspects that I see. So it gives me a little advantage in some ways when working with
Hmm.
clients. And, you know, um, honestly, I found that once we've dealt with whatever the root cause is, then, the world opens up for you. It truly does.
Hmm. So I do want to, so I have some comments through the live stream, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. So Ines Singh Banera says hi, and then Control also says hello. And then Rohan, who's recently has gone through some tough times himself. His father passed away recently. So he says that your smile is spiritual.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought that was
That's a
that was
that's a different one. Thank you.
Yeah, I was like, that's cool, but I see I love that. I see what he's saying. Yeah.
I can
Mm.
understand the grief aspect. I mean, and that's what drew me to timeline therapy and to do the latest NLP certification that I have, which I will be doing my master practitioner level next month. So, this is what drew me to it. Was I had a year ago, well, 3 years ago, I fallen off my deck, slipped, and fractured my back. So it took a lot, and this was that towards the end of COVID. So there wasn't a lot of healthcare available. There wasn't physio
Mm,
help available because they weren't working yet. And,
mm,
so it was basically, we'll figure it out on your own. And I thought, well, okay, I can do that. So I
mm,
figured it out on my own. But a year or so after that, I decided that I left my coaching practice. It wasn't feeling right anymore. It didn't feel congruent anymore. And the same with the podcast. So I took a 9 to 5 job thinking that's what I needed to do. Income would be great, all this sort of thing.
mm,
Do you know what? It was not the best job. It was a job I took. Uh, it was not a healthy environment to work in. So I left after 5 months, coming home and saying, do you know what? It was the best mistake I ever made. I learned so much about working with the different generations because I was the older generation. One of my trainers was a younger generation, and the conflicts that arise just from that, the lack of acceptance, I guess, in some ways, lack of respect.
mm,
Could be either way. I'm not saying it, one way or the other, but it does exist. And I left that position. I was so stressed out. I was ill. It made me physically ill. And I came home, and a month later found out my brother had died. And then a month after that, we lost one of our dogs, which may not seem like much to people, but to me, my dogs are my spirit. I would
Mm.
rather have my dog with me than a human being, because I get that sense of um, spiritual connection with my dogs. They they know me. They understand when I'm in distress. They understand when I'm unhappy. They stick to me like glue. Mind you, I say they. We only have one now, but that grief and the anger of the job and the anger at the loss and all that sort of the sadness, the fear, the hurt, all that stuff is what drew me to timeline therapy. And I reached out to a coach friend of mine that I interviewed years ago from Australia. And she and her business partner, they do certifications and training. And they do train the trainer actually for NLP and timeline therapy for Tad James. So I approached them and had 8 sessions of timeline therapy myself to remove the 5 negative emotions, which are anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt. Once those were cleared out of my body around those negative events, then there was so much more freedom that opened up. And then when that is done, when you've done the negative emotions, then we move on to limiting beliefs and limiting decisions. When you have those cleared, the possibilities are endless. It's a newfound freedom. And it also gives you the tools yourself to evaluate events as they occur and to take the lessons or the learnings out of those events. It removes the emotional attachment to those events, but you still remember the events. And that's one client that I've recently worked with doing the clearing of the 5 negative emotions. They said to me, I find it really interesting that you don't need to know what the actual event was. I don't as a practitioner. And I said, no, you're right. It doesn't matter to me what the event was. It matters to you. What matters to me is that you're going to take the lessons that you've learned once we've explored those events and bring them into the now, and then you take them into the future. So it's future pacing to see if that negative emotion still exists when a situation like that occurs. So I love this work. It's just astounding work. And it's made a huge difference in my life and for the lives of the clients I've worked with.
Mm. That's beautiful. Very impactful that you're able to, because of what happened with you. Oh, and Rohan says, I'm sorry, during when you were sharing about your dog and your
Oh,
brother. So
thank you.
um it it's what you're sharing with me kind of reminds me, like EMDR has had a similar effect on me. So for people who don't know what EMDR is, it's a type of therapy that is kind of like hypnosis, I would say, in a weird way, because there's a pendulum that goes back and forth, or a light, and then or use a pen depending on if it's online or in person. And then I'm clicking using like a clicker when it goes left to right. And stuff that used to be very, very traumatizing for me, whether it's like my dad hitting me with the belt or breaking clothes hangers when he was beating me or yelling at me, used to be like a 9 out of 10, on like how traumatic it was for me. But then after the session, it goes to like a 1 or 2, right? Because I'm able to um like, well, first it's like I'm reliving it, and then I see that, oh, okay, like what I'm able to see that this thing no longer, like, just to have empathy, and just have compassion for whatever my dad was going through at the time that caused him to lash out on me. So it sounds like through the training that you've gotten, not only are you actively applying it to the moments, it sounds like with your dad's alcoholism and I'm sure many divorce moments that they projected their own stuff onto to you, and now you're able to use, well, that I'm sure that helps with the compassion piece, but you're also now, because you've dedicated a lot of time and energy to learning a lot of these different tools and resources, you're attracting folks that have gone through either divorce, troubled marriages, people that probably have alcoholism run through their families as well. And um, so in a weird way, like all that, if that didn't happen, you probably wouldn't be as compelled to do all this training and to be able to give back, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Actually, a lot of the clients I've worked with have had something from their past. And as I say, if you don't deal with it, explore it, look at it, um, do the healing around it, that event is always going to stick with you. And it's always going to raise its ugly head. And I think, when you were talking about EMDR with the lights and the clicking and whatnot, I think with NLP, all these different modalities, what we're trying to do is to get away from the conscious mind.
Hmm.
The unconscious mind is where all the truth is, where the habits are, the patterns are, the learning is, the experiences are. It's all locked inside our unconscious mind. Our conscious mind tells us what we want to hear. Oh, I don't want to go to the gym today because I really don't feel like it, so we don't go. Or I'm hungry, I think I need to eat, but I want to lose weight. Well, our willpower gives up when we get tired, so we just go and eat. So that's our conscious mind. Lies to us, tells us what we want to hear, doesn't always tell us the truth, gets in our way and stops us from going into the unconscious mind where the truth lies, where the healing
Hmm.
lies, where the journey begins. And with the clients I've worked with, once we explore that, get at the root cause, deal with the root cause of what's stopping them from being successful in their life, what's preventing them from having all the joy, happiness, and fulfillment they want in their life. Get that root cause dealt with and out of the way. You still have those experiences, but you won't have the emotional attachment to those experiences or those events. And that's the beauty of all this.
I'm curious, what was that defining moment that caused you to want to do the NLP training, right? Because it's not, most people will stop at one or two different, like, maybe just CBT or just timeline therapy, right? But you were compelled to, because it takes time and energy, right? And resources, not only dollar wise, right? But just a lot of your effort as well, right? So
Yeah,
what compelled you to want to explore so many different modalities?
I think it's the reason that we have to find the one that works best for us. So, I did NLP in the beginning. The teaching I got from that wasn't enough. It didn't really it helped, but it wasn't complete. So I went and explored something. I have actually 3 NLP certifications, so from different people. So,
Hmm.
what works for one might not work for the other. What works for me may not work for you, Davidson, right? So I think that was it. I did hypnotherapy. It was fabulous. It actually broke open the door. And that allowed for the inner child work that I had to do, that I needed to do, not had to, I needed to be able to heal that little girl that was me and raise that little girl up in my unconscious mind, raise her up how I would want to be raised, give her the love and the hug and the kindness and compassion she didn't get from the people that were raising her. So that's why I kept going from one to another, because you get bits and pieces of healing and growth and change. And when you put them all together, then for me, it becomes full circle. But the NLP and timeline therapy, mostly timeline therapy, was the instrumental piece in who you see I am right now from a year
Hmm.
ago. It had such a massive impact on me that I just had to learn this and bring it to my clients.
That's profound. You're the way you're speaking about it helps me be able to see what each of these trainings have also done for me. So, and the keys to how do I communicate it concisely, right? So I would say my version of that was Landmark Forum was the thing that really broke open the dam. I think accomplishment coaching helped me be able to just heal. Like I think I cried 180 days out of the 365 days. So it was just like all about the healing. And they helped me be able to explore my relationship with money. And then Landmark, I think, like really helped me be able to see my parents as like they're humans, right? Like of course they're going to make mistake. Like they're doing the best with the resources, the limited resources that they had. And I saw that they actually do love me, even though it's like a weird way, right? And not maybe not the way I would like. I think Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny specifically helped me be able to see that, oh, everyone has different values. Like just because I'm more of like a green person, so he labels it, it's like spiral dynamics, which basically helped me be able to see like, okay, like I have part of my foot in the capitalism world and respect that that's what they value. And then also like I have my foot in some of the healing and more of like the woo woo and like that world and be able to just meet people where they're at and respect and not try to push my agenda onto people. And then with partnership explorations, I think that helped me be able to see that like just the power of philosophy and just be able to like metaphysics and just be able to integrate everything a little bit more. But yeah, to your point, it's like pe most people don't like, going to seminars where they're like crying for like 3 hours, right? Like that's not, but I love that. Oh, Rohan has a question. He says, what do you think about a balanced life? What do you mean by that, Rohan? Do you understand his question?
Not completely. I'd like more information on that.
I think maybe like how do you live like a balanced life is how I interpreted that.
Oh, how do you live a balanced life? I set my time where there are certain parts of the day that are just meant for me and for my growth, my time, my fitness part. I will go sit in my hot tub for 20 minutes and just get in touch with my unconscious mind as I meditate in the hot water. And, I'm surrounded by nature, which, our backyard is very lush with flowers, and we've created this oasis back here for us. So we sit there and, just enjoy the peace that nature brings. It's grounding. So a lot of the self work that needs to be done every day before you start the day, whether you journal, I write down every day one word that describes me. So today would be profound because I'm doing this with you. It's a profound event for me. It's a profound day. This is how I feel. So you can also do a grateful journal. What I'm grateful for today, 5 things, what I've learned today, what I want to accomplish on another day. So writing those 5 things down each is very good as well. And then you set yourself up. You do the meditation before you start your day. You get your day going. You fully lock into what you're attempting to accomplish. I use a lot of Yellow Brick Cinemas has a lot of music, and it was one of them was recommended to me for focus and concentration. And I use that all the time when I feel like my brain is going in so many different directions that I can't control it. I'll put that music on my desk while I'm working. And usually I find music distracting, but this music is actually geared to help the mind concentrate and focus. So there's another tool. And then I respect my own boundaries. So, and my own limitations too, as well. But when I'm working with clients, I also have to respect their boundaries, why they're coming to me. And one of the prerequisites of NLP is to respect the other person's model of the world. And that That's just one. I think there's 17 in total, but that's one, is to respect the other person's model of the world. So when we're working together, I need to respect where you're coming from. I need to understand. That gives me a place to start. And like we've done, through our interviews, we just develop a relationship and a rapport with each other that sets up a good start for the day and for working with another person. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I'm just present to well, first of all, I think everyone needs to hear your story, and that's it's interesting, right? Because I think a lot of us in America, at least, and or North America, right, in both of our cases, like we're so wrapped up in our own world sometimes, and like if we stop to sit and like have compassion and start to be curious about other people, because I've been guilty of like, oh, like no one could possibly understand like the pain and suffering or the crap that I have gone through in life, right? So I think if we're too focused on our own suffering, and yes, there's a time to acknowledge your pain, right? But I think if we get too wrapped up into it, then it could be unhealthy, right? Versus when you're able to transcend and you're able to transmute a lot of this, what most people would probably paralyze, like well, physically and emotionally and spiritually as well. But somehow you're able to take like lemons is like a understatement, right? And able to use it as an avenue to have more impact, right? And to be a bit more intentional as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it hasn't been a pretty process. It's been ugly at times, very ugly, very hard to deal with. My husband is a saint. He is right there with me, and he's the greatest guy in the world. And he inspires me. He picks me up off the floor when needed, because we all have days like that. And I when I have days like that, I respect those days, because those days are trying to tell me something. Those days are trying to teach me something. And it's just a matter of listening to what it's trying to present. And then once you
Mm,
see what it's trying to present, then you take an action of some kind to correct that or change it. So we want to take all the lessons out of the bad stuff, leave the bad stuff where it is, take the lessons out, and move forward, because staying stuck in those stories and staying stuck in the trauma serves no one. Truly,
mm,
it serves no purpose, and it serves no one. It does more harm than
mm.
good.
So he Rohan had a comment. He said, I mean that if I don't have a lot of money, then there's no problem. I can survive even with less money. There is balance in everything.
True, very true. And finding that balance is a unique thing. I have to find the balance that works for me. You have to find the one that works for you. Everyone has their own, and it's finding that suits you, not who you're living with or who you're working with, but you are the only one you have control over. You are the only one that can create change for yourself. It has to come from within. Everything has to come from within.
Hmm.
That's my belief anyway.
It's yeah, yeah. I mean, you're this is very profound. I'm so excited that we have the space to talk about a lot of these things. And I love what you said. What you said, my when you said my husband is a saint, it reminded me. That's how I feel about my wife, which is so. Rohan is single right now, and we've developed a relationship because he joins almost all of the live streams. So we've gotten to
Nice.
know each other over the over a lot of live streams, and I think it's funny because a lot of the people that come on the live stream don't aren't in a relationship, and also a lot of them share some sort of like someone grief as a comment, like Aniket, who's also a very regular, he joins us. His best friend passed away somewhat recently. So what so I have two-part questions, well, a statement, and then I'll go to that question. It's just I personally feel like there's a lot of healing that can be done once we surrender and have a partner to help us go through the journey with. Like my wife has been there through, and she loved me when I was such a loser and I was like trying to figure, it was like a 12-year trying to figure myself out journey, right? But she saw something within me and she was with me when I didn't have anything, right? Versus a lot like more people that are coming out now that I'm a bit more public, I guess. So the first question is when you've gone through like grief and you've gone to trauma and you're hesitant, whether it's conscious or not, hesitant about being in a relationship, right? Because maybe we're afraid that it's gonna not give us freedom or autonomy. How do we go about giving that up so that we can open our hearts for potential, especially when we've been through a lot of heartbreak? Is the first question.
I think I would want to explore why there's been so much heartbreak. What there's a reason that that started. Why there's so many relationships, why they're breaking down. Is it something that's present in himself themselves, or is it present, are they noticing it in the other person? Are your expectations off? Are you expecting the other person to fix you, save you,
Mm,
carry you, all that sort of stuff, when that's unrealistic and a lot of pressure to put on the other person. You
mm,
only have control over yourself. You are the one that has to make yourself happy. You can't expect someone else to do that for you. So,
mm.
does that answer the question?
Yeah.
I would do a lot of try to understand, and the term is chunked down, why that feeling is always there. There's something attached to that.
Yeah, I'll just speak to I mean, just in life, I noticed a lot of my friends, and I'm not gonna lie, part of there's aspects of me sometimes in various stages of my life where, and I see this a lot with marriages, right? Where it's like, oh, this person, if we ever get a divorce, like my world is over, and not to discount like the be like all the time and energy and you call it sunk cost fallacy, whatever it's called, and investing in that relationship, right? But it almost feels like there's a lot of attachment with my generation, for instance, right? Where it's like we spend so much time together, especially after the pandemic, right? Because that's even giving us more of an excuse to like, let's just be comfortable and like not have to like make an active effort to like hang out with other people, right? But I see the attachment to whether it's like being a parent and like a lot of control aspects of that and what and identity associated with like who I am when I'm like in a healthy relationship or in that marriage or who I am as a mother. And I just see it. I'm like, that doesn't seem healthy, you know.
Yeah, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be the perfect this, the perfect that, the perfect employee, the perfect spouse, you know, perfect in my world does not exist. Trust me. That's like the word normal. It doesn't exist either. I don't know why we use those words a lot of times, because nothing is perfect. It's it's what you do with what you have, how you want to be, how you want to show up. You have that ability to make those changes. You have the ability to stand up and say, no, I don't want that. Yes, my husband helps me a great deal because of my back injury. He pulls a lot of the stuff I can't do anymore. Um, he is my rock. He is my guardian. He is my savior. Yes, yes, yes. However, I still have a lot of times when I'll say to him, no, I don't want help right now. I don't need help right now. I need to experience this. I'm the only one that can get me through this, or I'm the only one that can make this change. I recognize that. He can't make me happy as hard as he tries. It doesn't, it sometimes it's overdone and it backfires. It happens, right? It happens to all of us. But I'm the only one that can make me happy. I'm the only one in control of me. And I'm the only
Mm,
one that can control how I show up, how I'm present in my personal life, my relationships, my friendships, my working relationships, all that sort of stuff. I am in control of that. And I have the power to change however I want to change, not how someone else wants me to change.
I, I mean, it's clear that you've done a lot of the inner work. Um, it's clear that you've been
Comes out a
through.
lot.
It's clear that you've been through a lot of challenges, right? It's as someone who I mean, obviously I'm probably a couple years younger than you, right?
Couple,
But
yep.
but I mean, as someone has gone through a lot for a relatively young person, right, of my age, like I could definitely relate to a lot of what you're saying, and I think all humans have gone through some aspect of trauma, right? That's just life. But I love what you said about there's so many quotable moments here that I'm like, ooh, this could be a good teaser, like in promoting this episode more, where it's like normal doesn't exist, like nothing is perfect. Like you have the ability to make changes. So like I wrote down all these amazing like quotes out. I'm like, oh man, this is so good about just like respecting your own boundary, my own boundaries, like my own limitations, respecting their boundaries and why they're coming to me, respecting their model of the world, right? As a coach, and as a healer as well. I'm like, ooh, like that's a good reminder, like especially their model of the world, right? Especially because the more training we've done, I feel like sometimes it's like, well, I've done the training, like I'm the expert, but it's like, well, that way of being probably won't attract people if we're being all righteous about it. So I love that
And that's
what
why
you
I'm
just said.
constantly learning, Davidson. I learn from the clients I work with. Every time I work with a client, it's a new experience for me, even though it's not a new experience. It is because I'm always picking up something, whether it be unconsciously, intuitively, compassionately, however you want to phrase it. There's always some little golden nugget that, the client just sets off in my head that is I find profound in how I show up as a coach.
Mhm.
So yeah.
That it's crazy, right? Well, I don't know if crazy is the right, maybe profound is a better word, but how many professions do we, when our clients get that breakthrough, we also get that as well, right? Because it's almost like we're like mirrors with each other. So
Yeah.
it's a very cool moment when your client gets that ultimate breakthrough in self-love or forgiveness or mindfulness or a lot of the topics you mentioned, and you're just like, I'm this is what I'm meant to do. It's
Yeah.
such a unique, it's such a cool experience.
And that's why last fall decided I was coming back into coaching after leaving it for a bit. How when you've made a difference in the world and your life purpose, your life passion is calling you. And that's why I came back into coaching. And then the podcast called me back. That's
Hmm.
why I started the podcast back again, because those little niggles that come to you saying, hey, wait a minute, this can have an impact, and not just for me. It's good for me. It's good for society. It's good for the world. And those are the things, that need to be answered. And that's why I'm still here. So
Yeah, I've been interviewed on a lot of podcasts, and the space that you've created and just the ability to just not feel rushed, right? Like not like, oh, I have to deliver value in like 5 to 10 minutes. Like
yeah.
it's a very sacred container. So thank you for creating that.
Well, you
Eh,
as well. Thank you for this. This is great.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will get a lot, and there's a lot of alcoholic fathers out there. I mean, alcoholism is rampant in so many communities. So I think this would be a great resource for a lot of folks that have gone through similar challenges, um, or any sort of medical, disability, right? That's also becoming even more prevalent nowadays, right? As whether people have gone through COVID or cancer, or there's just so many medical conditions now. And um and I also think it's inspiring for that you've gotten so many certifications, even three NLP certifications, right, to have a growth mindset. Because I do think some people stop after a certain time, right? Afterwards, once they hit a certain age, they're like, oh, like I'm good. Like I have like multiple PhDs or masters, like but it sounds like you're always seeking and you're always learning, even from various clients, right? You have that growth mentality.
Absolutely. I feel if I stop learning, I'm going to just sit and stagnate, and that's not going to be a pretty thing to watch or to be around. So, or to experience. So, that for me is I have to keep learning. I have to keep my mind sharp. It helps me get through everything that I have experienced, but it also serves my clients as well. So, and the other training that I've recently completed in January is breakthrough point assessment. And
Oh.
that one is just a bang on assessment. It's about 230 or 40 questions, but it incorporates 10 personality assessments into one. And once we do the scoring on it, we come up with what's called your breakthrough point or your ruin point. And out of um, the 10 personality traits, which are attention, emotion, composure, certainty, activity, boldness, responsibility, correct estimation, empathy, and communication. Once we get the scoring and the information there, I create a report. We find out what your lowest scoring trait is, and that's your breakthrough point or your ruin point. So
Mhm.
if that point isn't uh, coached around or worked on, it will uh, create a problem for you. For example, and I'm not upset to share mine, my lowest score, my breakthrough point was composure at that point in time. I did the assessment in January. December, I had had a breast cancer scare. So I was not in a mental place of peace and harmony. I couldn't control what was going on. I didn't know what was happening. Yet it was my body that was experiencing this, but I was in the hands of the medical profession. So you don't know what's going on. So I was out of control. I was in fear. I was panicking over, everything that was happening. So it comes to reason why my breakthrough point was composure.
Mhm.
After 3 months, and we recommend you redo the assessment after 3 months working on the breakthrough point, all the scores had shifted. I did my own self work. I did some coaching work on myself. So all of my scores had shifted. Yes, composure was still my breakthrough point, but the score was higher. So it wasn't as severe, put it that way. So, though, knowing what your breakthrough point is, knowing what trait is holding you back, is a really great tool to know where your starting point is with coaching or
Mhm.
growth. So, highly recommend doing that assessment.
That's cool. It sounds like you have a lot of tools in the toolkit, depending on
Yeah.
what your clients are coming to you with, and you're
Yeah.
able to be adaptive, right? Because I'm sure from month to month, certain depending on the circumstance and situations and what they're currently going through, be able to meet them where they're at, right? Instead of coming at it with like an agenda, essentially, right?
Yeah, there is sort of an agenda, but it's worked on together. It's developed together once we get through the first part of exploration of why you've come to me as a coach or a client. Um, when we develop the plan together, then it's adaptable. Yes, there's a lot of tools in my toolbox, but you know what? We're not one size fits all. So that's why I like the different modalities. That's why I keep learning as well, because there's always something else that can have an impact, like motivational interviewing. I did that. That was for addiction recovery and alcoholism recovery and drug addiction recovery. It's just a different way of speaking to people. It's having a conversation around what's going on and trying to pull out bits of information that we can take as an action step, an action point for today. How can we get you through this today? And we talk around that. So yes, it's talk therapy, if you want to call it that, but there's a lot of other modalities that are pulled into play that can create huge, huge change. And all that is said, provided the client actually does want the change. There's nothing a coach can do if the client doesn't want the change.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? So I'm sure timing is a big part of it as well, where
Mhm.
they have to actively be committed to it, right? And not quit when they are confronted or when they're triggered through
Yeah.
certain challenges.
Yeah, and it can be triggering. I won't say it will be, but it can be triggering, the work that we do. But we try to stay away. I try to stay away from those triggers as much as or hitting those triggers hard as much as possible. It does happen. Sometimes it needs to happen in order to get the breakthrough from it. So it's,
Mhm.
each case is unique. And
That
that's what
that
I love
sounds
about this.
that sounds healthier than I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the landmark modalities require like almost purposely triggering people so that it won't affect them as much by over trigger. I feel like in Tony Robbins sometimes does it as well, right? With someone who's like addicted to cigarettes, he'll be like, "All right, smoke this like 50 cigarettes right now in front of everyone," and then afterwards they're like, "All right, I'm never touching a cigarette again."
Yeah. Yeah. That's a different one. I did one with part of my NLP training. It was to change the thought process around something you really liked. And for me, it was the little chocolate Easter eggs, the little
Uh-huh.
Cadbury Easter egg. No, those things
Yeah.
are should not be brought in my home. Uh, but we did an association with it. And
Huh.
now when I see them, I think of liver. I don't think I can ever touch another one of those little Easter eggs again because I can't tolerate liver at all.
Um,
The smell, the sounds, the thoughts, the taste, bleh, no, not happening. So we did that during my training. So that one actually stuck, which could be a good
uh,
thing.
that's the NLP certification, right?
Yes. Yeah.
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 Wow, this has been incredible. Definitely one of the most inspiring and relatable as well, right? Because we're all gonna go through some sort of like traumatic incident, whether it's a car accident or divorce, right? This is very common, especially in North America. It's just there's gonna be a lot of so what's the best way people could get in touch with you? And it sounds like there's a lot of different resources that you offer depending on the right. So if you could share a little bit about how people can potentially work with you, that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. I do have a website, excuse me, it's teresasyms.com. So TeresaSyms.com. You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, email me at teresa@teresasyms.com. Get in touch today. I'd be happy to have a complimentary conversation around whatever the situation is that's holding you back or preventing you from living the life of purpose, passion, and excitement, and a life that you want. Um, the conversation is free, and let's get together and find out how I can best serve you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Teresa. We'll have to have you back on because I feel like there's just so much more I want to add to. But this has been really a treat. And yeah, it sounds like a lot of people are there's good engagement and a lot of people will if they reach out, yeah, just let her know what you thought about this episode and what your takeaways are. That's always a good starting point. And I'm so glad that the universe connected us. And I know that you're going to continue to impact so many lives through your being and just all the wonderful conversations and because of the containers that that you've created. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Davidson, for the opportunity, the platform, and for you to create this space for us. I truly value this. You are an incredible individual, and I value who you are. So thank you. And yes, get in touch and let me know what you thought. Happy to have a conversation around any questions you can bring up. So thank you.